is easing up on the blackouts this week. Has been some improvement in capacity. Daytime power cuts have been suspended, coming back in again 4 p.m. This afternoon, by the way. So the Electricity Minister, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, is going around and visiting power stations. He wants to get an update after that visit back in March. So really what has suddenly happened that we're seeing so much less blackouts in the country? Let's find out. Energy expert Mohamed Madhi joining us this morning. Mohamed, good to have you with us. Not that we're complaining, we'll take it. The less blackouts, the better, of course. But is that true? Have we suddenly gotten more generating capacity? Is the load on the grid suddenly slowed down? It's difficult to believe.
Look, this is good morning, and good morning to the viewers. This is something that we had predicted. And in fact, even on the station, we had predicted this a few months ago, that in this period, at this time of the year, if you look at the trends, and if you look at the trends historically, this time of the year we have a lower demand than we would during peak times, those peak times being summer and winter, of course. So that on the one hand, you do have a lower demand, which is historical, which is following a pattern. And at the same time, you have generation capacity that has come online from Kusile, and overall the generation fleet hasn't been that much under stress. So those two factors combined have made it possible for Eskom to have less load shedding. This is entirely predictable, and this is what was expected. I think the fear, of course, is that we get lulled into thinking that we now have a reasonably healthy grid and a reasonably healthy transmission distribution network, which we do not. We need to just step back, look at what should be happening, what entails a healthy generation capacity, what entails a good transmission and distribution network, a healthy transmission distribution network, and we're very far from that. So good to celebrate some gains now in this time of the year, but we need to work very hard to make sure that we don't have the kind of crippling blackouts that I forecast we would have in December, in January, and in winter.
As far as the we part of working hard, I imagine the we part in this could be Eskom, because when we see reduced blackouts, the load on the grid is decreasing. What is Eskom doing during that time? I'm sure they're not sitting back and sitting on their laurels enjoying the moment. I'm sure they're doing maintenance, etc. Isn't that the whole idea of what they're supposed to be doing?
Absolutely. Look, Eskom are working hard, and I think all the parties involved are trying to work hard. My sort of view is that we can work quite a bit smarter. Eskom is a little bit constrained in the sense that they don't necessarily always have the kind of funding available to catch up on the backlog of maintenance and to bring the generation fleet to the level it should be. So that is the one issue we have. But we also tend to be overly focused on Eskom. Eskom, of course, is a big part of the issue, but we need the private sector, and we need government in particular, to continue this very good route that they've been on, liberalizing the energy industry and continuing to de-bottleneck the problems that the private sector have in bringing new generation capacity online. Let's not forget, you have Eskom, and you have new generation capacity from the private sector. And that is making a huge difference as well. So
is that why we're seeing, Mohamed, is that why we're seeing a sudden improvement in the blackouts? Is it because of the private-public partnerships coming in, more the private in this case? Are we already seeing the benefits of that? Is that something we can quantify?
Absolutely. So it is quantifiable. The private sector is spending in excess of 2 billion rand every quarter in new generation capacity, on behind the meter capacity. So it is one of the factors that is contributing to the lower than normal load shedding. And in fact, it's a fairly significant factor.
I want to just get your thoughts before I start saying goodbye to you. There's a lot of confusion. I'm not asking you to explain the grids and all that, but I do have you as an energy expert with us. It wouldn't be right if I don't ask. This whole takeover of city power from Eskom in Johannesburg, do you have any views and any thoughts on why that would be the case? Why is city power taking it over from Eskom? What's the thinking? What's the rationale? Is it a good idea?
Look, it could be a good idea. One of the reasons, of course, is city power is very close to a large number of industrial clients. When I say close, they are the primary contact. They are the provider to a large number of industrial clients, and City Power needs to protect its revenue. So, of course, when there's a huge amount of load shedding and that load shedding is out of its control, it has no control over its revenue. So this is a good thing on the one hand. On the other hand, there are large customers who are directly clients of Eskom. And those clients, large industrial and commercial companies, would now be subject to City Power's interaction, but having Eskom as their primary supplier of power. So that is potentially a recipe for confusion. So the whole thing, I think, is going to be a bidding down period. There are going to be teething problems, but hopefully over the next, and it's not going to be quick, over the next 3 to 6 months, we should start getting a smoother process in terms of City Power, Eskom, and end users.
I think because, and this is in closing, Mohamed, what confused some people is at this changeover, City Power came out and said that it'll only ever be limited to 2 hours per day, regardless of the stage of blackouts. And then that got people wondering, and I'm sure you probably thought the same thing. Well, hang on. When Eskom was in charge in Joburg, we would have up to 8 to 12 hours, sometimes more per day. Now City Power comes in and says, no, that's okay. Regardless of the stage of blackout, you'll still only get 2 hours. So either City Power is underestimating how bad the problem is, or to my mind, Eskom wasn't explaining how they were doing their job properly. It can't be both. What do you make of it?
So I think the principle would be that those that are in charge of the generation capacity are the only ones who can make definitive statements to the extent that they have knowledge of, the outages, that they can make definitive statements about how much load shedding there is going to be. City Power is not in control of the alternate generation capacity. So statements that they make are subject to what happens at Eskom and are subject to the state of play with the generation fleet. And the generation fleet itself is an unknown in many cases because we have so many unplanned breakdowns. So I think those kinds of statements are, not the smartest to be made at this point.
Yeah, I think that's what is confusing so many people, how they've come out with these statements so quickly. But Mohamed, appreciate it. Thank you for ingratiating me there towards the end. It wasn't really what we were going to be talking about with Mohamed. It was more about the Eskom and the improved energy availability in our country. But while I had him, I'm sure you wouldn't mind, I just quickly wanted to ask about the City Power and Eskom, that little takeover over the past few days.